So, let's start it again.
Okay.
Welcome to the PONS headquarters in Hungary.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah,
You are from, as far as I know, from Lancashire.
yeah, from Lancashire. Yeah.
So you are obviously English.
I'm obviously English, very
Then
English.
you must be very happy today.
Yes, absolutely. Very happy with the football last night. I was a bit worried on Friday with the Scotland-England match, but much happier.
Friday was, whose fault was that? Southgate?
I mean, just all of them. I just think none of them were putting their heart into it really, and but they felt like a different team last night. They felt like they were trying. So we've got a chance, but I wouldn't bet any money on England at the moment, to be honest. So
Yeah, I think, I don't know, they should play more Rashford and Sancho. I mean, they were good yesterday when they came on.
Yeah.
And
Bit more spirited, a bit more passionate. So yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see. Fingers crossed. So
Okay, and you are English and you are an English teacher who...
I was an English teacher. I'm not as much anymore, but I was teaching English for about 10 years. Started teaching in Spain. Lived in Spain for 3 years, and in Italy for 2 years, teaching over there. I've been teaching here in Hungary for about 4 years as well. So I'm just kind of moving away from the teaching, just to focus just on the writing now. That's the main aim. But I do occasionally work for a very good school here in Budapest, where we specialise in business English. So it's good fun.
And you are here exactly because of the writing.
I mean, I'm here because of the writing. Absolutely. You kindly invited me.
As we are at PONS, you wrote us a couple of different books about English language.
Yep, that's good.
What can you tell us about methodology behind these?
Methodology. I have been thinking about this, and I was thinking, do I have a method? I mean, the way I started writing for PONS is that somebody in Italy, another teacher at the time, I think I mentioned that I was interested in writing, that I've written short stories for competitions and things, and one day he just kind of knocked on my door and said, do you want to possibly write some crime stories for this company called PONS, which I didn't know much about, and I was very interested, and so I got in touch with them. And I imagined that they would give me some, specific details as to what they wanted. And they basically said, no, we want about 12 stories, crime stories. They have to be set in English-speaking countries, and they have to be written at a certain level. And that was it, So not many specifications. So it keeps it kind of open. So at first I was like, brilliant, but where do you start with something like that? And I think for me, it took me a while to learn how to do it, but I think you either have to start with the character, the location, or the crime. It doesn't, not specifically one of them, but you have to have one of those in mind, and you kind of work forwards from that. So I'd maybe imagine, right, I really want this story to be set in Scotland. Where would be an interesting place for the reader to maybe learn about, or to at least imagine? So maybe Loch Ness, that would be a great place to, a scenic or atmospheric place to have a crime. What kind of crime could you commit in a loch? Not many, apart from murdering or disposing of bodies and whatnot. So. So that's kind of the methodology for the crime ones. I think I've written about 80 crime stories for PONS in total, and it's always been that, where do I start, and then also where do I end before I actually start writing. Once I've got the idea of the character or the location. These stories are quite short, so you've got to make sure that there's a bit of a twist or something at the end to leave the reader satisfied. You can't really develop a character or make a very, very long story, so there has to be that twist at the end. So I always think of the character, then think of the ending, and then sit down and start writing it.
So that's the line. First the character.
I think so, character, or maybe the crime itself. At first I think I was only focusing on murders for these crime stories, but then after a while I got a bit bored of just murders, so I wanted to try different crimes as well. I think I've done some like frauds and robberies and diamond heists and things like this. So yeah, trying to make sure there's a bit of variety. You know?
My favorite, I read a couple of the stories, and
Right.
my favorite is the Australian story where the salties.
Okay, yeah,
I just
yeah.
learned that were the salties,
Right.
the crocodiles. And
Yeah.
how do they call it? The British bomb?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, or maybe it's a bit of a stereotype, but yeah, Australians used to call the British PONS. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's what makes it really fun, is thinking about these different locations around the world, and trying not to be too stereotypical. But as soon as I thought Australia, I thought, well, there has to be a shark or a crocodile or some sort of nasty animal involved in there somewhere. So yeah.
Do you always put into the stories some local thing like the language?
Yeah. As much as the level will allow. If it's a higher level of book, if it's maybe B1 or up, then you can definitely start to throw in some of the local dialect phrases, or try to convey that through the way they're speaking or something like that. So yeah. Obviously with lower levels, maybe it's more the scenery and some of the local customs that you want to show instead of through the language. So yeah, keeping in mind the level is the trickiest thing, I think. Yeah.
Do you decide how many new words you can put in, and do you decide what to translate with the footnotes, or?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's not my final decision, but so they normally give me a specification, like we can't have more than 10 highlighted words or translated words per the original page, maybe not the book page, and they always ask me to do that first, to highlight the words I think would be best or most needed to be translated, and then I send that off to my editor, and then the editor will then say whether they agree or disagree, and sometimes it's a little bit of back and forth, but ultimately it's the editor's choice. The editor knows best, and so then and they decide what to translate. And it's interesting because sometimes it's not always what I had anticipated, but I mean, I'm not a German speaker, so you do have to, if it's, for example, for a German reader, there might be words that I think need translating, but actually in German those words are very similar. So it's it's a bit more complex on that side as well.
Okay. And you have some really special locations. How did you find them? I mean, Australia, South America.
Yeah, I suppose. Maybe there are places some of them I've been to, some of them I definitely haven't been to, but I would like to go. Some of them are related to friends or people that I know. Like I do have some friends in Australia, so when I was thinking about the Australian story, I definitely sent a quick message to a friend, any recommendations or things that he could suggest. I think especially with the later books, nearly every story like this, the Taste for Murder one, I think every story in there I could kind of pinpoint a person who kind of inspired me or kind of gave a suggestion as to the different locations. So yeah, I think if you just, if you sit in a dark room trying to write by yourself, you're not going to get much. You've got to get out into the world and talk to people and get ideas from them, get suggestions from them, and let yourself explore the world a little bit. So.
Did you read a lot of crime stories when you were a child, or?
I mean, it wasn't. Yeah, I mean, I didn't just hunt out crime stories. I definitely grew up on, Sherlock Holmes. These old traditional Sherlock Holmes stories. My mother was a big, still is a big Agatha Christie fan, so I think I read some of these as well. And then I remember I read these kind of kid detective books, like maybe not Famous Five, but there were the Hardy Boys and things like this. And but I was a much bigger fan when I was a teenager. I was a much bigger fan of Roald Dahl, who's like, most people know him as a children's writer, but he's also got a huge selection of adult short stories that he's written as well. And I was just obsessed with those stories because they were so short and so simply written, but they always had a fantastic twist. The twist at the end was always what kind of made those stories. And so I guess in a way maybe I've combined, or tried to combine, some of the crime elements from classic crime things with this idea of a Roald Dahl story where you've always got a bit of a twist or something at the end that kind of maybe you don't expect as much. So yeah,
I like those twists you make. I mean,
thank you.
I remember those on the Queen Mary.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
QM2, I think.
Yeah. QE2. Yeah.
With a lady who was just burning someone for the
yeah.
taste of murder. I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that was quite a long. I can't remember when I wrote that one, but it feels like a long.
I think it was Taste for Murder.
Right. Okay. Right. It feels like quite a long time ago, but the funny story behind that story, I suppose, is that I love stories set on transport. I don't know why, but I love something if it's in a confined space. I always find that's really interesting for crime stories. So I love if it's on a train or on a boat or something where the suspect can't really escape. So I had the idea of setting it on the boat, and then I didn't really know who my characters were, but I think in the end I kind of based there's three men.
They are all authors.
Yes, yeah.
One of them is a playwright,
there's
a film.
Yes, exactly.
And the third one,
maybe a script
writer. Novelist.
Yeah. So these three characters are definitely based on me and my brothers, my two brothers. So because my older brother is he's a film director and a writer, and my younger brother he's more of a theatre actor and a script writer. And so I don't know why, but I just thought it'd be fun to kind of put us. And I think even the names of the characters I used. Mine and my brother's middle names. So there's I think there's an Edward, a Michael, and I'm trying to remember my other brother's middle name. I can't remember, which is terrible. But yeah. So yeah, you definitely find little bits of your real life kind of seeping into the story. So I think you should. I think that's the way to make the stories a bit more fun, is to use some bits from real life. So yeah.
And you, as far as I know, for the beginning of your career, you had a little bit of connection to the crime on the low and older side. You worked in a court?
Yeah, I worked in that was again, wow, it feels so long ago. That was just when I'd finished university, and I studied literature at university. But I didn't have a clue really what I wanted to do afterwards. I knew I wanted to write and to be a novelist, and then saw this job pop up in a newspaper or something, and it was for the Sheffield Crown Court, and it was the court reporter, which isn't quite as it's not as amazing as you think. You're not writing stories about the cases. You're sitting in the courtroom, and you're basically writing notes on everything that's being said by the lawyers and the judges. And so it's quite a serious job, but at the same time you're sitting there thinking, this is fantastic, this is great material that I could one day use. And there's definitely one story in one of the earlier books which is set in a court, and that was definitely based on something that happened to me in real life. I think I was on a break, and I'd gone outside the law court for some fresh air, and I literally stood next to the suspect who was in the case. They'd been let out to have a cigarette, and I could hear them discussing it, and I was like, crikey, this is bad. I shouldn't really be so close to them. Obviously, I didn't pass on that information because it could have had some terrible effects, I think. But
life makes the best topics sometimes.
Definitely, absolutely. Yeah.
And you moved around Europe a lot.
Yeah.
Worked in Spain, Italy.
Yes, yeah.
And now you are Budapest. Why you are in Budapest? Why in Budapest? Why you chose it?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't really, it wasn't a planned thing at all. I just felt that I'd kind of got to know the west of Europe, but I didn't really know anything about Central Europe at all. I'd never visited Budapest. I'd never been anywhere in Central Europe, and yeah, just knew that I wanted to change. Italy, everyone always thinks that Italy would be a very relaxing place to live, but I found it to be not so relaxing, maybe because they're so relaxed, whereas I'm kind of the uptight Englishman who likes to be on time and things to work well. So yeah, I asked a few other teachers for recommendations for Central Europe. Some of them said like Vienna, some said Prague, but nearly everyone recommended Budapest. And yeah, I think it was a great decision. So I've been here for about 4 years now, and yeah, love it, absolutely love it. So.
How long will you stay, or?
I don't know.
You get bored?
Yeah, I guess yeah.
You need a new challenge. Or?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, my partner, my girlfriend, she is the head of operations at the English school here, the business English school. So she's very much enjoying her job.
She's English.
She's English as well, but we met in Spain, and then we've had this little journey around Europe together. So
the cosmopolitan life.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think I feel less and less English. I love England, you know, but I do like to think of myself as European. So you know, despite Brexit, I still feel European. So yeah.
Finally, someone I met who feels himself European.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have picked up a lot of things in my years traveling. So. Yeah.
So yeah, you don't really agree with Brexit?
No, I would say definitely hard no for me. If anything, it's making my life more and more difficult. But yeah, it seems like a step in the wrong direction.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
we'll never know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, and back to the books. Do you have a favorite one?
A favorite book or a favorite story? Or
a favorite book of yours, or a story? I
mean, I do like the later ones, just because you know, the earlier ones I was still kind of, you know, finessing things and learning how to do things. I feel like A Taste for Murder or The Recipe for Murder, I think these are two of my favorite collections. Yeah, definitely. My favourite story in those, like I say, I like the stories that kind of remind me of my friends. There's one story I think in I think it's called A Taste for Murder, which is two people playing chess, and this I was inspired by a friend of mine, Istvan, who lives here in the city. We used to go out and play these games of chess, and I talked to him a few times about, you know, crimes and whatnot, and yeah, and then another story is all about this maniacal statue maker. And this reminds me of a good friend of mine, again from Budapest, who he's kind of obsessed with statues in Budapest. And so, yeah, so each story has a different, you know, memory or connection for me. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite author?
Oh, that's impossible. That's an impossible question. Yeah.
You can tell it.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I always think you have to kind of break it down into different genres. So, as a kid, I was a big Stephen King fan. I used to love horror stories and whatnot. If someone told me I could only read one person's stories again, I think it would be Roald Dahl, just because these short stories are just so well written and so precise, and each of the endings has this fantastic twist that I love. So yeah, yeah, and then Arthur Conan Doyle for the crime, just for how complex they are. At the moment, I'm writing a novel of my own.
That would have been my next question.
Okay.
Well, and thank you.
Yeah, and that's definitely inspired by Arthur Conan Doyle. It's kind of detective stories for kids. It's got the main characters are very young boys, like 12 or 13, and they end up kind of working for this detective agency, and that's in a fictional kind of country, not quite England, but very similar to England. All the best bits of maybe old England, as it were, kind of like a fantastical 1920s where pre-computers, pre-iPhones and whatnot, and where you can still get into trouble and spend time playing in the woods and things. So that was definitely inspired by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
And when is it supposed to be published?
When's it supposed to be? At the moment, I'm about halfway through. Halfway through the first draft. I said that I definitely want to finish the first draft this year, preferably by the end of summer, and then spend more like the winter months working on redrafting it and trying to get it into some good form. But and I've got a couple of potential publishers who have mentioned they might be interested. But it's a work in progress. No rush at the moment.
So hopefully in 2022 we can buy it.
Maybe, absolutely. If it's published, I'll bring you some copies down for sure.
Okay, thank you. And the books, the language books, PONS books. What would you say to our readers why they should choose these books?
I mean, for me, it is something completely different. I know when I grew up and I was learning languages, it felt like a trial. It felt like quite a tough task to get through. It's different in Europe, I think. I don't know, when I tell my students that in England we don't learn English grammar, we don't, at no point do kids have to study English grammar. It just seems like a really strange concept for us. Maybe the first time you start talking about verbs and nouns and things like this is when you start to learn another language. But before that, we don't mention grammar, we don't make our kids study grammar at all. We learn languages through reading, through reading books, magazines, and from films and television. I'm a big fan of grammar, so I don't want to say that you never need to study it, but I think the first thing you should be doing is sitting down, trying to absorb the language, trying to build vocabulary, reading things that are fun. It shouldn't be a trial, it shouldn't be a chore. And so I think that's what PONS does very well. It makes learning the language a pleasure. Whether you like crime stories or whether you prefer these kind of Anglophile fun or romantic or silly stories, it just makes the whole experience more pleasurable, I think.
Okay. So these short stories are completely good for learning languages. I mean,
I'd say so. Yeah.
They can spend 5 minutes or
absolutely
10 minutes to read it.
Yeah, cup of tea. Get your cup of tea and settle down, relax. All the vocabulary is there for you. You don't have to Google it or anything like that. So you've instantly got these new words at hand. And you can see the words being used in context as well. It's not like just trying, a teacher throwing 10 words at you without any context. You're never going to learn those words, you're not going to absorb them. But if you can see how those words are being really used, are used in a natural way, much more useful. These books are great. These are like the Black Sheep or the...
you can even find mind maps in them.
Exactly, These stories are different to the murder stories. Each story was kind of based around a real part of life, like going to the shops or public transport or eating in a restaurant. So practical things that you need to know about. And at the end you've got a mind map of all the vocabulary. But then also in the actual stories, the key vocabulary is written over the top of the translated words, so it just kind of lets your eyes flow over it. You don't need to be constantly going to the glossary, and it's a good easy way to learn, I think.
Okay, next books in the PONS series?
I was just thinking about that. What's coming out at the moment? I think these are all out, and then the next one I'm working on is a collection of stories set in Australia. So yeah, all
It's
these.
gonna be like the murder stories,
No,
or
I mean, I guess there could be some murder, but not as murder heavy. It's more there's a few books that I've done which are visual learners, where it's just mostly about lots of great pictures in there to show you where the stories are set. And so the next one's going to be set in Australia. So at the moment I'm doing lots of research into any differences between English and Australian
that must be
language.
hard.
It's interesting. It's interesting. I've got a lot of Australian friends who I can speak to about this. I've not been to Australia yet, but I know a lot about Australia. And so researching it thoroughly, and it's just interesting for me to find these new locations, and all the stories are going to be set in quite famous or typical locations that people might be interested in visiting one day. So I think the main difference between British English and Australian English is the pronunciation, which obviously we can't really show in the written form, but you can show it through the choice of vocabulary. So
Can you tell us one story to be about? Not the whole story. The idea behind it.
I mean, I don't know if I'm quite at the stage when
Okay.
if I'm quite there yet, but I definitely, I mean, a favourite film of mine as a kid when I was growing up was Walkabout, where these two kids get lost in the Australian outback. So I definitely want to do a story about I imagine these British tourists, getting horribly lost out in the countryside and trying to survive for a little bit out there. I think that would make quite a fun, interesting story. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a message for learners in Hungary?
I mean, I always a lot of my Facebook posts and things like this, I always end by just saying keep on reading. Keep on reading, which is such a silly thing to say, but I do feel I sometimes get a little bit worried that people are reading less, or they're reading Instagram only or Facebook only. But yeah, the real way to learn language is by reading stories and by reading fiction, immersing yourself into a story. I think you're going to learn much more interesting vocabulary instead of the same kind of repeated Instagram buzzwords. And yeah, maybe you're going to learn a little bit about the world or some great places to visit. So yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah, keep on reading.
And reading is generally just a good thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Good for your brain. Yeah. Good for your eyes. Better than staring at a screen. So yeah, keep on going. Yeah.
Okay, then that's a good moment to wrap up our conversation. Thank you for being with us here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
I hope you go to the sixth sector of today's match, and maybe we can meet.
Maybe, yeah, absolutely. Wave across the crowd. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.